Hello, welcome to St Michael's Hill. This is part 2 of the Fiddle Yard Build series. If you haven't seen part 1, I'll link to it now. Maybe worth checking out that first. In today's video, I'm going to look at the hard standing, which is available from Scale Model Scenery as a kit. Links to that in the description below, but you'll see how that kind of comes apart and goes together. I'm very impressed with it. The other thing I'll be doing is ballasting the track and trying out a few things with ballast in the fiddle yard. I know most people wouldn't think to ballast their fiddle yards at all, and normally I wouldn't, but for the upcoming project I want to kind of experiment a little bit with some new techniques first. I've got some new ballast that I have not used before. I want to try some different things, so I'm going to be ballasting that. So I think the first thing to do is to hand over to myself a few days ago, working with the Scale Model Scenery hard standing. So the kit comes, as you can see, on a single sheet. They basically just pop out with a little bit of force. They're all perforated, so it's a fairly easy job. I was just being a little bit delicate with it. And effectively, there are 4 different types in the Code 75 kit. So there are thin strips for the rail. The one I'm removing now, I believe, was the base that goes along the side. And then there's strips that go on top of that, which are going to take some of the paper detailing parts. And then finally, there is thin kind of sliders that go underneath to kind of level everything up. The 5th piece is just basically an extension pack that you can use for creating kind of a wider yard. Once you've got all the wood pieces kind of cut out, the next thing we're going to do is cover some of them with the patterned kind of hard standing that are supplied with the kit. So I just basically trim off the white edges and basically provide them in position. I can trim off the excess later. It's quite important to kind of cut the backing papers along the lines between the concrete, so it makes the lines on the hard standing match up quite nicely, as I'll probably show you in just a second. There are only 3 pieces that you really need to cover to create a single track hard standing. So there's plenty of spare kind of paper that you can use for other things or for using other tracks. As you can see, I'm just trimming down the edges here to get a nice kind of line. It's probably easier to do it this way than to measure it all out beforehand. And that's pretty much it really. Very easy to go together, and let's have a look at the results. So here's the final result. I'm fairly happy with how they've gone on. There's 1 or 2 spots that just need a little bit of tidying up on the corner here. Just need to maybe file that down tiny bit, and then where the joins between the 2 bits of paper are, I just need to kind of cover that in, but that won't take much. Maybe a little bit of pen or something just to hide that white, although even that's not too bad. Generally they look all right. I'm gonna see how they kind of go down. I probably will add some more kind of weathering to these, just a little bit, and a little bit of maybe greenery where kind of weeds have been coming through and all that sort of stuff. So taking what Scale Model Scenery have given is a fairly great base, but just going to try and add on top of that to kind of make it a little bit more unique and try out a few things. So I'm just waiting for the track to dry. Once that's down, I will glue in the side pieces. I'm going to go there, and then the next pieces go on top. So just a process of waiting for those to be done. So it'll probably be tomorrow for me, but I'm sure I'll be back with you in just a second. So now that I've got the textures drying, I'm going to look at getting the track down. I'm kind of thinking this sort of position, I probably will have a bit of track to go beyond to allow a bit more kind of storage. And also it will allow me to try a few things. So I do want to try another method of the hard standing, and I might try and find a way to combine them. So for example, on the new layout, there's definitely a good chance that I'll have a lot of straight sections, but I'll need to then curve it. So I'll need well, hopefully I'll be able to use this for the straight sections, and then I'll use another method for the curve. So I might just experiment a little bit there. Another thing I will do at the end here is just do the sleeper spacing again. Incidentally, I'm not using the foam underlay for this, just because Scale Model Scenery's instructions imply that this is stuff fine to go down on cork, but not the underlay, so I'm just going to do it straight onto the wood for now. That shouldn't be too much of a problem. I'm probably not going to weather the track at this stage either. If I need to do that, I can certainly just mask off the textures and go from there. So the first thing I want to do then is cut the track to size, and then I'll get about getting some copy decks down. So I've now stuck that down in place. As I said before, I've kind of spaced the sleepers that are going to be outside of the hard standing. I've left the ones on there just as they are for now. I'll see how they look. If it's something that I think I'll need to do on the main layout, I will, but I also don't want to spend a lot of time doing it to find out that they're going to be barely visible, so I've left that for now. Once that's dry, the next step will be with some wood glue, is getting the undecorated sides down. They're going to support the decorated pieces that go on top. So then I've now glued down the first boards, and I've also glued the middle section with the concrete pattern in place. My track isn't exactly straight, but it's been okay. I've managed to kind of just bend these a little bit. I had to hold it in place with a few pins, but generally it's gone together fairly well. And as you can see, it's clearance all the way along the middle for rolling stock. So it's yeah, it's gone on pretty well. The next step, I'm going to take these top sections that have been glued on, had the pattern glued on, and again put them in place. The one thing that I'm not entirely sure on is where they should be placed, whether it's right up against the rail, or sorry, like that, or just down a little bit on the chair, next to the chair or the rail. So I think it's like that. So I'll get that in place. One thing it does suggest is that you place these little end pieces under here as well. So I'll get those glued down and then get the topping added on. So there's one for each side, and get them added on. It's a nice kit. It's going together fairly easy, and hopefully the end results will look good. So I'll get back to you once that bit is done. So those sections have been fitted in place. Just waiting for them to dry fully. In the meantime, I'm going to start the ballasting of the rails here. So I'm going to be using a Woodland Scenics grey blend, but a fine ballast. So this is more commonly used for N gauge, or at least it's supposed to be used for N gauge. I used a medium last time, which is a little bit on the large side, I think. So I'm going to try this fine ballast and see how it goes. So I'm going to use my usual method, which I probably won't go into too much detail, but basically it's a case of just placing the ballast onto the rails in a way that looks kind of good, using a spoon to just gently tap the rails, the sort of thing, which is effectively tampers them, simulates what's actually done in real life. And then I'll use a mixture of water, PVA glue and a dab of washing up liquid, and just liberally go over the top of that and fix it in place. I'm going to do the same with the points, just being careful not to get any in those gaps between the blades, as the way these haven't been wired up, they're going to be very crucial. One other thing I will do is I will slot another sleeper just in here. It's just a simple case of taking a sleeper like this, removing the chairs for the rails and just sliding it underneath. So I'm going to do that now. I'm not too worried about a slightly different colour. These things always happen on the railway, so that's not too much of a problem, and it's all going to get weathered up eventually anyway. So I'm going to do that now. I'm going to ballast all this section here. I'm going to, I will ballast this end here. I want to see how the ballast looks up against the Scale Model Scenery hard standing. This end I will leave just because I'm going to use some cloth plaster, I think is how you say it, to extend this a little bit around, and then I'll ballast on the end of that as well. So I'm not going to do that yet because I'm not exactly sure where the hard standing will end. It will probably be around here, but I just want to be sure. So I'll be back once all that's done. So one thing that's always actually amused me with the fine ballast or any of the wooden Scenics ballast is that it's been sealed for freshness. You wouldn't want stale ballast at all. So the hard standing's gone down. There is a slight edge, as you can see. That's where the track's not been laid entirely straight. So that's not a problem with the kit as such. On the other side, it's the opposite, so you can't see anything down there. That's probably more like what it should look like. I'm just kind of trying out a little bit of ballast here on the end, very kind of quickly down at this stage. It's literally still wet. I've just applied a little bit of PVA. I haven't weathered the track or anything before that's gone down. I just want to try a little bit of experiment. I've mixed in some watered down acrylics, some kind of dark greys, just to kind of basically imitate where the all the diesels, all that spilt. Again, I'll probably need to do something very similar along the centre of here, or at least on part of it, to try it out. I did give the hard standing a quick blast with some acrylic varnish, just to kind of make it a little bit waterproof. Obviously when you do the ballasting, it's watered down PVA, didn't want that getting in there and causing a problem, so far so good. Also, if I'm going to apply ballast weather into the hard standing later, a little bit of matte varnish is going to help the powders or whatever stick to that, so that's what I've done. In terms of the track, I've basically started to ballast it, so here is the result so far. So this is kind of part way through the process, I suppose. I've literally just kind of got the initial ballast down. All needs to be cleaned up a little bit. When I mixed the PVA and water, put that all over the ballast as usual, I mixed then in a little bit of grey paint and some brown paint, kind of watered down. It's a technique that Mike Buick's kind of given me, and I'm by no means a master, of course. If you want to really learn how to do track work, either look at his stuff or maybe even speak to him. But he's given me a few pointers that I'm kind of working through. The concrete sleeper track here has been done in exactly the same way. There are a few things that I'm not happy about, and I'll kind of talk to you about that in a minute, but generally the ballast is great. They're kind of using the end gauge, it really kind of makes a difference. If you look there, that's the kind of Woodland Scenics 00 gauge ballast, and I think you'll agree that the kind of finer one meant for end is much more suitable in reality. So there is work that needs to be done to this track, I think. So having a look at some pictures that I'll try and put on screen now of Patchway Station, the sleeper colour is actually far closer to what was there before. So this sleeper here has had some of the paint that I've kind of primed it with removed, and that's probably a lot closer to what I want. So yeah, I need to kind of look at that, and the rails just need a bit more of a touch up. I have actually done the work down this end a little bit more, so I've started to remove the paint from the sleepers. I think the whole priming thing probably is going to end up being a bit of a waste of time, really, for me. It depends what kind of look you're going for. I don't notice it so much as an issue on the wooden track. I think actually that looks quite good. Probably a lot more wooden than it did before, but for the concrete sleeper stuff, certainly the grey primer is not probably what I'd use. So what I've done here is I've stripped the paint off of the sleepers, and then given them a bit of a dry brushing with some kind of greys and some burnt umber kind of paint into various amounts. So there's, you know, a real kind of mishmash of colours. I probably will get some white or a very light grey, and do a little bit more dry brushing at the end as well, just to kind of lighten some of this up. This is probably something that would represent quite a used piece, maybe in a station or a yard. I think the colour of the ballast a bit further down here is a bit more mainline, so probably on this section when I'm amending it, I'll remove the paint from the sleepers and do the dry brushing. I'll touch up the rail because some of it's not the best, and then I'll probably leave the main colour of it. Won't add too much of the grey down the middle, whereas at this end I've added a bit more of the grey to kind of represent something a little bit darker. So I'm quite happy with what's at this end, and it will just need to be repeated kind of down this end to kind of make it work. This here as well will give probably a very similar look to this in the end. It just needs to dry. One thing that is quite interesting, where I've laid the track on the board, you can really see the difference between having a track laid like that, and this is 75, so it's slightly thinner profile anyway, and then this is the 100 that's been laid on a track bed, and you can see that the ballast shoulder really kind of adds something to it, which is why I'm always going to use some sort of ballast shoulder. With the points, again, these need to be tied up a little bit. I actually did the point last, so it's kind of one step behind some of this, but just needs a bit of a tidy up. Some of this is a little bit messy still, but it's the same process, just being very careful around the mechanism, making sure that that kind of is always going to be working, and try not to get any glue on the inside of the rails here, because it's going to cause problems when conducting electricity. I think I'll probably leave it there for this video. I will, like I said, do some other hard standing down this end at some point, but I will probably leave that for another video. The scale model scenery stuff is very good, actually. It's gone together. I think the papers that come with it, with the texture on, are actually a really, really good base. And like I said, you can work on top of that. So I guess in a few weeks I'll probably bring you a video looking at various types of hard standing options. I'll look at weathering this one up a little bit more. Also there's some canal plaster that you can get from Wix, which has been suggested by Steve at Railway Laser Lines, so I will give that a go. And then also the depot that I got from him comes with its own hard standing, so I'll look at kind of that and weathering that up and looking at some different techniques, but that will probably be for a separate video. So thank you very much for joining me today on St Michael's Hill. I hope you've kind of got some ideas and some techniques and all that sort of stuff. I would always say that I'm not a master of any of this, it's just what I'm doing. So if you like what you see, then great, but I'm not saying it's by any way the perfect way of doing things. I will leave you now with some running shots, and I will see you again next week on St Michael's Hill. Thank you. Goodbye.